Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. How are you guys doing today? If you're new around here, my name is Ron, and today I'm going to be repotting my Rhaphidophora, I was going to say tetrasperma, my Rhaphidophora Hayi. Alright, so I wasn't even planning on filming a video today, but all I wanted to do was simply re-top dress the top of the soil here, because I noticed how the soil was just clumping up and not really absorbing enough water. But as I was running my fingers through the soil, I noticed this. I thought it was a dead leaf, so I was trying to pull it out, but look at this. See that? That is what we call a death plug. And what that is basically whenever plants originate from a wholesale nursery, not to drop names or anything, but in this case, this is grown by Costa Farms, as it says right here on the label. What they do is typically when they're starting off seedlings into tiny little pots, they put this death plug or this membrane around the soil in order to kind of make it easier to transport the plant as they continue to grow. Or they could start off as little compacted soil discs, which is actually covered in this membrane. And this membrane is very, very similar to dryer sheets that you use with your laundry. So you can imagine the thickness of that, right? It's supposed to decompose over time, but what happens is most of the time it doesn't decompose fast enough. So the roots tend to continue growing and they sort of become blocked and constricted within this wall of membrane. So what results from that usually are leaves that don't really fill out. As you can see right here, the leaves were really big. Yes, I know it's probably because of the humidity level in this room. It's not very high. This plant loves high humidity, upwards of 70%. I typically only get 40 to 50% in this room with my humidifier. So yes, that could be the reason why the leaves are not filling out, but we're gonna see the impact that this death plug has on the roots in the pot. So let's get started. Okay, so today I'm going to be using my green potting mat, and here is the plant. So as you can see, the soil in here is really clumpy and dry and will not absorb water as quickly. So I'm gonna take out all of the soil and replace it with a very chunky, airy mix that is very good for aeroids. But here is the death plug right here. You see how kind of stuck it is in there? So let me just take out the nursery pot. See if there's any roots coming out from the bottom. Nope. All right, it doesn't seem to be root bound at all, which I didn't think it would be. There's a lot of dried roots. See near the top here, the roots are just falling apart. That's because the soil is not hanging on to the moisture. So it's causing the roots to quickly dry up. So that's not good. All right, so here is death plug number 1. Because this is multiple plants in the pot, this is a separate death plug. And let's just try to break up this hardened soil right here. It almost feels like a rock. So I'm not removing the plank because some of the roots are attached to the plank and I don't want to separate them. But eventually, probably really soon, I'm gonna have to change out the plank because the plant is outgrowing the plank. Okay, so this, you see how there's a root attached to this? Well, there's several roots attached to this, and they're like pretty stuck on there. So it's gonna be really difficult to try to separate that. So what I think I'm gonna do is just kind of cut around it and remove as much of the membrane as I can. But it doesn't seem like it's going all the way around the root system. So they probably tried to remove it before putting it into this pot and decided to leave this piece in there. So I'm just gonna try to remove even more of it. Okay, I think that's good enough. I don't think this little piece is gonna restrict any more of the roots. The roots down here seem to be pretty healthy as well. They're white, fuzzy, and fleshy. So it's not too bad. I just have to remove all of this dry soil. Okay, so here is another piece with no roots attached, thankfully. So the soil mix that they use in this pot seems to be very, very high in coco coir and possibly peat moss. It's fluffy, but it's not that airy. And as you saw, it's very prone to hardening and clumping and drying out. So I'm excited to get rid of this. But let's flip this over and continue working on this side. Here's another piece of that with the root going through. There's another piece right there. Here is, I believe, the final membrane right here, which looks like it's in the worst condition because there's just a lot of roots growing right through it. But I'm gonna try my best to carefully remove it without breaking any of the roots. But it's inevitable. Some of them are breaking already. But this is gonna help in the long run. Now I'm just gonna kind of fine tune it a little bit. Okay, I think this is pretty good. The roots do feel more on the dry side, and it's because of the soil mixture itself clumping up and not absorbing enough moisture. So I'm hoping the new mix that I'm gonna put it into does a better job. Oh, now I can actually count how many vines are in here because I bought this one from my local grocery store because of the number of vines that I noticed in the pot. Most of them only had one on each side of this plank. But it looks like there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there are about 6 separate vines, with some of them actually stemming off of one vine, if that makes sense. But they all have potential to grow into 6 individual vines, so that's pretty exciting. I think one day I'm gonna have this plant climb up one of my walls in this room, hopefully, if it thrives. But yeah, now let's get the new potting mixture set up. Okay, so here I have some soil pre-mixed, but it has some regular potting soil, extra perlite, charcoal, orchid bark, and I've added some sphagnum moss to kind of give it an extra bounce and fluffiness. So I'm pretty sure it's gonna like this mixture right here because it's super chunky. Let's just give it a quick stir. See how that falls apart? I think that's pretty good. Okay, so let's bring in the pot here, put down a layer, let's give it some taps to make sure all the soil falls into the loose cracks in there. Now I want to make sure that there is soil right up against the plank right here because I have a feeling there's still some air gaps, so I'm going to focus my attention in there. Okay, now I just want to make sure the plank is sitting nice and straight. Then gently secure everything in place by pressing it down. All right, there we go. Now we can just put it back in its cash pot. Oh yeah, that soil looks much, much better already. But before we put in the cash pot, I'm gonna give it a really, really good soak of water because we want to activate the sphagnum moss so that it expands and holds moisture. But to my water, I'm gonna be adding this Dr. Q's plant tonic, which helps prevent transplant shock. You can also use Super Thrive. It does the same thing. But I'm just gonna be adding a few drops of it into the watering can, which is filled halfway. Give it a good swoosh. Okay, so I put the pot in this ice cream bucket and I'm just gonna go crazy with the water. Clean off some of the leaves. And I'm also going to spray the plank. Okay, now we can put it into its cash pot. All right, this is so cool. I think the soil, the difference in the soil mix makes this plant look so much healthier. So hopefully the roots get settled in there very quickly now that it's very chunky and airy in there. And hopefully it continues to thrive and push out bigger leaves because it's so beautiful when the leaves are this big. The smaller leaves are pretty cute, but please thrive because I'm gonna put you on a bigger plank and you're gonna grow up into my ceiling. All right, so I placed it right next to my humidifier, right over there. So hopefully it gets all of that good moisture in the air, and hopefully with it sitting right next to the grow light, it gets a lot of energy to push out bigger and bigger leaves. So if you guys enjoyed the video, please do hit the thumbs up. And if you haven't yet already, plant scribe. All right guys, thank you guys so much for watching and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.